the end of the year, and we hope we cross over to the new year.
Yes, Jojo Jacoya, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. Glad to see my friend Dr. Chodo, my leader in the diaspora. And please, before I say to the Kenyans and express my gratitude, just want to correct, I'm not a professor at Nairobi University.
You used to.
But I teach elsewhere. But I'm just wishing Kenyans good luck and also to persevere during these hardships, economic and health hardships. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And also much later we'll be joined by Professor Chacha, Nyagori Chacha, and also Professor Winnie Mitula as well. But for now, let's see what is fresher off the press this morning. We begin with the bold paper, that is the Standard, and this is what is your splash today. OKA leaders tough stand on Raila. That is what is headlining the front page of the Standard this morning. OKA leaders tough stand on Raila. Rising temperatures, Mudavadi says no to Olive Branch. Asks presidential contenders to stop wooing him. As Kalonzo challenges ODM leader to retire. Group to field candidate for top seat. This story is well fleshed out for you on page 7 of the Standard today. Musalia says, quote unquote, I cannot say at this time and point that we have made any decision other than the fact that we as OKA are moving forward and we shall build our momentum. Also, we have Kalonzo saying, quote unquote, the two of you came together and brought peace in the country, but to maintain that peace as Uhuru goes home, he should be joined by Raila. And we have a quote from Raila saying, quote unquote, I know my path and Musalia's will cross. I'm sure we will walk together. That is on the front page of a Standard. Also, we have a sidebar there. Alarm over rise in COVID cases. Health Ministry data shows increase in COVID-19 infections with more than 7,000 cases out of 75,318 sample size reported between December the 4th and 18th. That is a story that you want to follow on page 4 of the Standard. Let's see what we have on top there on the teasers. Tourism warming up in Coast. That's on the national page of the Standard this morning. Nyama Choma, one more reason to go easy on it. Find out why. And that is on My Health segment inside the Standard today on page 2. And thousands graduate in muted feet because of COVID-19. And we have also inside the sports on page 38 and 39. Athletes want to forget 2021. That is your copy of a Standard today, the bold paper. Make sure you grab a copy and read all the gritty details inside there. Let's see what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation. Red alert of a toxic nuclear cargo at port. Red alert of a toxic nuclear cargo at port is what is a splash on the front page of the Daily Nation this morning. Public health, the flag reads, the ship was sailing to the port of Dar es Salaam from Mumbai in India. Environment scandal, that is what the sub-headline is probing as a question there. A controversial ship that is docked at Mombasa Port is loaded with harmful nuclear waste that has been disguised as padlocks and hardware items. The dangerous cargo was intended for dumping at the coast, putting the lives of millions of East Africans in danger. This story is fleshed out on page 6 of the Daily Nation. Just maybe to read a snippet of what they're saying there. And it says investigating officers have established that the nuclear waste originated in Mumbai, India, and was en route to the neighboring country of Tanzania. This is clearly a means of dumping dangerous substances in East Africa. We prove that what was declared is just part of the contents, but radioactive materials is also in the ship and is emitting high radiation, said a source involved in the ongoing investigation on conditions of anonymity, since he's not authorized to speak to the press. You can follow that story on page 6 of the Daily Nation today. Also, Joho finally backs Nasir for governor. Is a sidebar story there. Joho finally backs Nasir for governor after months of sitting on the fence. Mombasa Governor Hassan Joho has finally settled on Vita MP Abdul Swamad Nasir as his preferred successor. You can read the rest of the details on page 5 of the Daily Nation today. Parenting. Parents' nightmare schools close. Christmas holidays after banning dormitories, holding teachers to ransom, going on strike and drinking themselves to a stupor on their way from school. The high schoolers are now home for the short Christmas holiday, and parents have to put up with the nightmare of their unruly behavior. You can follow the story on page 7 of the Daily Nation this morning. Let's move on and we see what we have on the front page of the People Daily. And this is what is on the front page of the People Daily this morning. All right, as I try to bring it to the fore, let me go with the Business Daily. Just buckle down to a bit of business as I try and shuffle from the People Daily. This is what is on the front page of the People Daily this morning. Inside court row to stop Uhuru CRB freeze order. Bureaus argue freeze on sharing data on loans will stall lending to small businesses. The High Court has declined to stop the order from President Uhuru Kenyatta suspending the blacklisting of defaulters with loans of less than 5 million and sharing data of borrowers negatively listed with credit reference bureaus. You can follow the story on page 4 of the Business Daily. Good try on face masks. That is Maseno School students listening to Education Cabinet Secretary George Magoha. When he visited the institution on Saturday, he asked the learners not to endanger the lives of others. It was striking that a number of students wore their face masks as is recommended at a time the government is urging people to be vigilant in efforts to keep COVID-19 at bay. You can follow. This is a standalone picture there. And we have Treasury unveiling 95 billion shillings parastatals bailout. The Treasury has budgeted 95.5 billion shillings to partly ease cash crunch in key parastatals in 3 years from July 2022, citing their strategic roles in economic development. Right, let's cross over to Rwanda, where we have the New Times, and this is what you're waking up to on the front page of the New Times in Rwanda. Just to get a splash there on the front page of the New Times in Rwanda. But Taifa Leo is up, which is ready as we try and also load up that particular daily from Rwanda. And this is what you're waking up to on the front page of the Swahili paper. Waliotwanga Raila kisiasa wamnyenyekea. Waliotwanga Raila kisiasa wamenyenyekea. That is a splash on the front page of Taifa Leo. Great. Let's see also what we have on the editorial cartoons. I'll begin with the Standard, just to show you what we have on the front, on the editorial pages of the dailies today. Beginning with the Standard, we have this on the editorial page by Gado. It's all about the IBC and preparation. And we can see everything that is thrown every which way. If we may just focus on that a bit. IBC with ICT, IBC with the ballot box, IBC and the state of preparedness there is what Gado has captured inside the Standard today, just to show you the hard copy there. This is how it looks, right? In light of where we're headed in 2022, what is the state of election preparedness? That is what has been captured by Gado. Inside the Daily Nation, we have IGA. IGA has drawn this particular editorial page for us, and it's all about the trade wars between Kenya and Uganda. You know the story by now of the bans of the Ugandan product. Kenya has said they're substandard, and of course also Uganda has retaliated, and we know about the eggs as well, and the chicken. That's how it looks. This is what has been captured there by IGA. Let's see what Stano has for us and Luzon inside the Star. And this is what has been drawn by Ozone today inside the Star. Waiting for it to just load up. There you go. The best of the many last bullets. Right, you remember Raila really speaking about his last bullet that it has been stashed away for use in 2022. He's been using arrows and spears And that is what has been captured by Ozone. Right, let's see what we have in the People Daily. And this is what we have on the editorial page, page 14, according to Stano in the People Daily this morning. And there it goes. We can't allow you to drive in that state. Somebody there is in a drunken stupor. Don't worry, officers, my car knows its way to my home. That is what has been captured there by Stano inside the People Daily today. Even as people are heading to celebrate Christmas, let's be careful in our roads. That is what we have inside the People Daily editorial pages this morning. Great. Right, we want to just focus on how the year has been, and our guest will be taking us through a raft of issues, and the editorial cartoons will also be aiding us in trying to, of course, set the stage and a segue to the discussion that we have this year looking at the editorial cartoons. But I just want to get a general overview from our panelists on how they think the year has been as far as politics, looking at the political tone and tenor in the country up to now as we're heading towards the general election. What is the general feeling? What have they observed? What should be, some of the corrective actions that as government and as citizen and as, of course, collectively as a country, we should focus on? Let me just begin with you, Dr. Shemo Chwodo. And I know, first of all, from the diaspora, there has been a heavy debate on the diaspora vote, and I think for the longest time you've been fighting for that particular space. Finally, IBC also seems to be coming through. Just enlighten us briefly.
Correct, Debal. I'm delighted with my good old friend here, Professor Wajakoya. But that cartoon that talks about my car being able to detect,
yes,
there is a side of it, electric cars.
Electric cars.
I think that's futuristic, but of course, drunken and driving is a no-go area. But having said that, yes, diasporas are happy to an extent that some countries are being included, enfranchised in the elections that are coming up next year. I think 7 countries, Germany, USA, UAE, UK, Canada, South Sudan. Yes, we're happy that's happening. Of course, it would have been nice to have it in all the countries wherever they are. But of course, even those countries, there are still challenges. A major challenge, I do know Chairman Chebukati was addressing Kenyans in the UK this weekend. Commissioner Dr. Justice Nyang'aya was also in the US and met KDA US members and others in that journey, and the High Commission and the embassies. But yes, there are still areas that need to be worked on. The requirement for valid passports and national IDs. Although Chairperson was optimistic that he expects a third of eligible to register, my estimation is that in all the countries, those 7 plus the old 6, if we get 100,000 diaspora registered and voting, we will be very lucky. But that would be good enough start. So yes, this has come of age. It's important to enfranchise them because leaving out 4 million eligible Kenyans, that's a huge number. So starting from that is an important point. And I'm glad Professor Jakoya has also been in this struggle, trying to get diaspora enfranchised and feel mainstreamed like part of Kenya. Lastly, I must mention that we're likely to see the highest flurry of diaspora candidates this coming year, which I think is good for the country. But of course, there are still many roadblocks on their ways. All
right, do you have any names in mind and where they're planning to be vying, or that one is also the best kept secret as it is?
Oh yeah.
In terms of strategy.
Apart from somebody like Professor here, I could mention at least 2 I know. Our legal counsel, legal lead, Henry Ongeri, will be running for Governor Nyamira. And Rachel Mwakazi Skiep from Norway will be running for gubernatorial seat in Taita Taveta, just to mention a few. But there are many others as well. Perhaps the most prominent would be Ambassador Bishar. Ambassador Bishar will be running for a seat in Northeastern Province, so in NEP, FCDC as it's called, is yet to decide whether to go for gubernatorial or for parliamentary. But being the only Kenyan currently that's heading a global UN agency in in Bern, Switzerland, I think it's very key for us. The point generally is that diaspora also want to be on the decision-making table going forward.
Thank you very much. All right, so we have the year in review, and we're going to be looking at some of the editorial cartoons that, of course, made to the editorial pages, and that will act truly as a reminder of what really happened from January up to December. And I want just to begin with this particular editorial cartoon that was in the Daily Nation. This is by Victor Ndula. In January, we saw how also we had the heightened, debate on the hustlers and the dynasties. And we can see here the LP being put there by Deputy President William Ruto there with the UDA political operatives there. We can see Boni Khalwale, we can see also the face of Murkomen there, and the face of Senator Mudama as well, and people are proffering their hands. So he's saying stadiums and laptops is old music. Let's play hustlers and wheelbarrows. And that was the heightened debate that started off the year, beginning last year to January as well. Do you think in any way, Professor Wajakoya, this particular debate has, went off as we are heading even towards 2022, because people are really talking about class wars, hustler versus the dynasties, but now we can see more political agendas are being put on the table and ideologies, so to speak. We have Azimio la Umoja. So it seems this hustler and the wheelbarrows narrative is quickly fading off. If you may just have it back.
I don't know what to say. It defeats my thinking when I have to speak on something that has no value in society. Looking at how the Soviet Union or communism started and extended its muscles in socialist countries like Tanzania, where people were regenerated to think in another format. I do not know why this wheelbarrow thing and the music on it, and the agitators, the people who have not even, who cannot even pass the test of chapter 6, if you look at the faces, and I'm not going to mention them, you find out that the most corrupt members of society, those who have had some kind of luminous character, are the ones singing wheelbarrow, are the ones singing the spoon, how do we call it?
The spade.
The spade. If you look at their backgrounds and you look at their records and you look at their records in terms of corruption, none of them can pass, because they have not come out to tell Kenyans that, look, and I'm talking of the likes of Murkomen and Khalwale, they have not come up and told Kenyans, look, this is me, I'm self-declaring my interest to serve you, but this is how my backyard looks in terms of corruption. None of them mentions about corruption. None of them mentions about what has been happening in the first 5 years of Jubilee administration. Now they have come up with this money-owning technique of telling Kenyans that we are now the ones who can. But if you look at the whole group, you see the wash-wash group is there, all cartels, the middle class, the mediocres, the people who are involved in fraud, they're all in that wheelbarrow. Can I say anything more? But I wish to thank my friend and my leader in the diaspora. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Shemo Chodho, your reaction on that particular editorial cartoon?
There is no denying that inequality is a huge problem in Kenya. In my mind, something has been bothering me. A question that probably should go to all Kenyans. How much of the matunda ya uhuru has you as an individual Kenyan had? I think there are few select who have overhad their share. They have had much more of their share than they deserve. So the issue of inequality, inequity, it needs no gainsaying. So that's for a fact. As to whether the bottom-up or whatever top-down method should be used, I think for me, any method that puts money and jobs, money in the pockets of Kenyans, youth, particularly youth and women, should be welcome, particularly if it's genuine. I'll try to refrain from judging. The Bible says don't judge so that you shall not be judged. But obviously the kind of leadership that Kenya has had, and I'm not just talking of leadership at national level, I'm talking about leadership all across. Leadership at devolved level, leadership in all other sectors, in the private sector, in the diaspora, in civil society, in the faith organizations, leadership has been wanting. Why do I say this? I say this, Dibal, because why does Kenya or Kenyans remain where we are, stagnant, while other countries have moved on? South Korea is a good example, and Singapore. Why haven't we, if we had been well managed, then we should be comparing ourselves with those countries. So in a nutshell, my take is that yes, we've had a leadership deficit. Conversations around jobs, around poverty, around impunity, around corruption, around ukabila, which many people are very uncomfortable talking about. Those are things that need to be addressed, and we need to address them as a country. And we probably only need to have a national conversation. Unfortunately, opening up the TJRC report may not happen before the next elections. But ultimately, that's what's going to heal and reunite Kenyans and ensure that we have a truly cohesive and equitable country.
Right. And I'd love you also to tell me about the forum you've been heavily involved in as well. That is the Dialogue Contact Group.
Sure.
And in light of this particular narrative that was being driven in the country, how did the Dialogue Contact Group also try to intervene and educate Kenyans?
I can tell you for a fact there are a number of bodies, Kenyan and non-Kenyan, that are pretty much concerned about how do we ensure that we have peaceful, credible, free and fair elections next year. And that's commendable. I'm not permitted to say, but I can say that the Dialogue Contact Group is very much active, working together with various initiatives that belong to it, including Friends of Kenya, that's the international community, but also the religious leaders, the Peace Actors Forum, and other players, just to ensure two things. That one, we have a national mediation team, credible enough and respectable across board, as well as eminent women mediators, because often women are forgotten in this journey that we take to, because one, women usually are the major victims of electoral violence. But also when people talk of mediation, we tend to forget them. So I must mention that, yes, the DCG, Dialogue Contact Group, which together has eminent business people, KEPSA, Dr. Chandaria, and others, as well as the National Council of Elders, is very much alive to the fact and concerned about how do we ensure we have credible elections. So that's an effort that's ongoing, and we want to encourage Kenyans, not only at the national level, but even at county levels. There are hotspots, whether it's like Kipia, Kapedo, and other parts of the world. There are modest silos of efforts to mediate, to make sure that we have peaceful elections. Not only peaceful, credible, but also free and fair. I think that's important.
Right, thank you. And also, in the month of February, we had that particular debate on MCAs and the BBI, them being shoehorned or they were being bribed with car allowances and some loans as well. That also took center stage. And this is what was drawn also by Victor Ndula. In order of BBI priority, we just have it as well, just to bring back that particular debate of where BBI was coming from as well, and the bribery. Finally, we saw the demise of BBI with the court ruling that is still, with the courts as it were. So we're eagerly waiting to see if that ruling also will be done in February next year. But talk of bribery or how people perceived the MCAs to be, shoehorned into this particular passing of the BBI so that it might go through, the House and be passed, but that was quashed at the end of the day. Let's begin with you, Professor Ojekoya.
First of all, thank you very much for bringing that issue of the BBI. I, in person, was against it, even though the BBI was a good thing, but the way in which it was formed and the leadership that was appointed, it sent a lot of wrong signals to the electorate. And secondly, the issue of inclusiveness was not there. The DP was not consulted. Other political leaders were not consulted. It was like one cage that was aimed to push an agenda aimed at the 2022 elections. Selective amnesia, in a way. And if we may proceed, the government itself shot itself in the foot by bribing openly the MCAs so that it could actually make its way through. Popular participation was not properly done. People were not given enough time, and there was no need to hurry. I'm glad it flopped because of the methods and procedures that were being used were very absurd.
Thank you. And also we're joined by Professor Chacha Nyaigoti Chacha. Chacha, good morning, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. And of course, you've joined while the conversation continues apace. We're still looking at how the year has been, especially the political tone and tenor in the country. Very heightened political season that we've had this year. And this is where we are at, looking at the editorial cartoons. We have, that is the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. Way back in February, there was this debate about bribery and the MCAs, and we saw a lot of the MCAs passed this particular bill from the county level, as it were, save a few. And we know the demise of BBI as it is right now. We're eagerly waiting, as I've mentioned, also for the Supreme Court to give their judgment as well. But your reaction, looking at the journey of BBI from the inception, from the handshake to the MCAs, and also to that particular seminal ruling from the courts in August?
I think it has been a very engaging journey. It has been a journey full of intrigues, and a journey full of hope, and a journey full of expectations. But at the same time, we have seen that our constitution and our systems which are in place have also played certain roles, some which are perceived to have been very detrimental, but others perceive them to have been facilitative, in the sense that it underscored, for example, the role that judiciary plays when it comes to determining matters without the influence of the executive. Where we are right now, we are still hoping that this matter will be concluded, because initially it was meant to be giving a roadmap for the way Kenya people can move forward in peace. So we are looking forward to the remaining part of that journey and how it will be unfolded. When it unfolds positively, then the Kenyans will celebrate. If it continues giving people some contradictory positions, we will continue having our normal Kenyan style of doing things, where we engage in confrontational situations and dialogues, but at times we don't even move an inch forward for the benefit of the common mwananchi.
Yeah, and Dr. Shemochodo, we've seen the president giving a shot also to the BBI life during his Jamhuri speech as well, saying that we are not yet done and dusted with BBI. BBI is not over. We'll see it coming back to life. So, like it or lump it, it will help it.
Debal, allow me to say I'm delighted to see good old friend, Professor Chacha Nyaigoti. Indeed, it was very much part of the very initial journey that birthed the BBI and the handshake. I remember in late 2017, courtesy the Danish embassy and Uraia, we had a retreat out in Manzoni, and Professor was there. Fast forward, the dialogue contact group that comprised elders from diverse groups, religious leaders, businesses, and so on, and media as well. And former U.S. Ambassador Godek was very instrumental in this regard, in bringing the principles together. I remember with nostalgia a meeting on the 7th of March, 2018. That was just 2 days before the handshake, when we had the opportunity to meet some of the principals and or their representatives. And it was clear that a handshake was in the offing. But having done that, the initial thinking of the groups that precipitated the handshake was to truly unite the country. As to whether we achieved that goal with BBI report and all that followed is something that's up for conjecture. And I wouldn't say that BBI has collapsed. I must say I get worrying signals when there is insistence to see it through. We don't know what the leadership knows that we don't know. In all this journey, I know Kenyans have vilified the courts, the judiciary. But I must say that I stand on the side of the judiciary, imperfect as it may be. But so far, it's only all that Kenyans can count on for now. So the far and short of it is that the judiciary may rule in a manner that's not conducive, but above all else, we must learn to respect the rule of law. Because if we don't, then we're in great trouble.
Mm-hmm. Right. Professor Wajakoya?
Well, I concur with what Professor Nyaigoti has said, and my friend, Dr. Chwodo. The only thing is, if things have to be done, they got to be done properly. We do not have to do things undercover and then come up to hoodwink Kenyans. And that's exactly what we learned from the BBI. It is a good thing. It meant well for Kenyans, but the selfishness of the leaders involved is what we are against, and I concur with the courts. Procedure is very key in everything that we do. We've got to follow a particular path that has been laid in the regulations. So when we come up and we find out somebody saying it will be this way, and you have not asked me how I want to be taken that way, then what do you expect from me? Talk to me, let me understand you, let me sit down with you, and then let me also digest. Give me time to think about it. But you cannot just go sit down in a room with a few men and then copy, paste, and come to me and say, now we have come with a handshake, here it is good for you. Talk to me first, include others. And that's why we failed. Otherwise, this issue of the courts coming in would not have come in.
All right, and we have also as well the Deputy President that has starkly denied to join the BBI camp from the beginning, and we can see this was depicted by this particular editorial cartoon there, the BBI and the BBI no camp, where he's torn or being pushed every which way in between, but he has stoutly denied or refused actually to join the BBI camp, and that he was the one who was on the no side of the BBI.
I think the Deputy President is trying to be vague and narrow in his thinking. It is either his way or the highway. Let people exercise their democratic rights to do what is right for themselves and for the country. You can now not come in and try to remind us of the Moi era, where either you carry one, if you showed two fingers, they were cut off, one finger is okay. That's signs of dictatorial, and it is not argument.
But he's entitled to his own opinion as well.
Well, but he should not impose his opinion.
At the end of the day. Thank you. Thank you, Raj. Professor Chacha? Yeah, we saw the Deputy President turn in between, not really turn him into between. He made his stand, and he was tried to be wooed on this other side by the two principals as well to join the BBI camp, but he didn't.
I think we have a lot of challenges in the Kenyan political scene, where individuals, some of them believe that they are very important. But I think going back to the observation made by my friend Dr. Chwodo, there has been a number of us who thought that we can indeed behave like mature citizens of this country who are concerned about the future of this country. Because some of the leadership we have in the political scene is not concerned about the future of Kenya. It's just concerned about individual gains and aggrandizement. And this has been a challenge throughout our history, that putting the country's interests ahead of our personal interests has been very difficult. And I believe that the day we discover the best way how we can look at this country and say, we belong here, all of us, and we should listen to one another, we will then get rid of leaders who are obsessed with their own egocentric feelings. I believe that the Deputy President's position regarding BBI was not the correct position, because part of the initiative was an agenda that his boss initiated together with the Prime Minister. And it is true that he may not have liked everything that was in that document, but it is important for him to participate in finding a solution instead of scuttling and putting in disarray the whole journey, because the Kenyans are still interested in concluding the journey of peace, and we must reach there because the country is bigger than us as individuals.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. All right, let's just move on and see what also happened in March. And we had this particular debate that was heavy as well as far as KEMSA is concerned. I'm turning in between. You wanted to say something, Shem? Sorry.
If you permit,
please, yes.
Did
I jump you?
Yeah,
sorry about that. Yes.
My take is that I think, like everybody else has shared, BBI had good and bad. I wouldn't want at least to say whether more good, more bad, but they were good and bad. Mm-hmm. Throwing away the baby with the bathtub isn't the best. But having said that, we have a say in my vernacular that there are times you have to blame the fox, but also the hen.
Yes.
I think both sides did wrong in this regard. The way BBI was started was fairly elitist and exclusive. Mm-hmm. That wasn't right. Yet our Constitution talks about public participation. The spirit of the Constitution says let's be involving. So I agree with Professor Chacha that let's not just take Kenyans for granted. As a matter of fact, what I pray for is that how I wish Kenyans we could have a super handshake between all the major actors, that we come together as a country, say, look, with leadership, we are in this transition stage. The rest of the countries are moving forward. We are losing investors. Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate what's happening in Ethiopia and in the neighborhood. But before that, we've lost lots of investments to the neighboring countries, Ethiopia, Rwanda, and so on, which is not bad, but how I wish that some of those investments retain. So my thinking is that to cool down the temperatures, yes, the rising temperature, the toxic politics, for me, I would blame both sides, not just one, mm-hmm, but both. We as leaders, we need to show the way, and time is fast running out, particularly for the administration. There are Kenyans who say, well, we can tolerate them for the next 7 months.
Yes.
I mean, when it gets to that stage, then it means something is not right. Mm-hmm. So my plea to President Kenyatta, his handshake partner, and his administration, yes, let's take advantage. History will judge him very well if he steers this ship very well for the remaining time that is in office.
Thank you. And of course, also in February, before I go to March, we had this particular telling editorial cartoon as well, and the pronouncement by the vice chair of the Jubilee Party about the eviction of the deputy president from the party. And this is what was, captured by also Victor there. Eviction notice effecting the exit clause. That was in February. And this has been a lot of debate around it, especially looking at the National Delegation Conference that was meant to be for the Jubilee Party, but it never really came through. And that was meant also to make sure that Deputy President is ousted as the Vice Chair of the party. Let me just begin with you, Professor Wajakoya, on this particular one. Deputy President has been the unhappy camper within the Jubilee Party, and crying foul, how he's being mistreated, and people are saying, hey, if you are that particular doggy that is sitting on that particular nail and you're always yapping and backing, why can't you just stand up and walk away from that particular nail that is pricking you, which is a Jubilee Party? Yeah.
That's why I respect the late Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. When he saw that things were not going well, he just stood up and he left. And he fought his wars until God took him away. When you look at the former Vice President Joseph Murumbi, when things were going this way, he just said, you know what, thank you, continue. But why Ruto has stuck on the same chair when he knows that he fumbled in the primaries of Jubilee, when he knows that he's had his own agenda right from the beginning, which has placed him where he is. I mean, this is the biggest slap to democracy in the world. It's also very, very unfortunate that party politics are not being taken, party discipline it's not being taken seriously in this particular country. If it was in the UK, for example, the Conservative Party, and a member of the Conservative Party was playing double standards, the person who ought to have resigned there and then, otherwise public interest will demand him to do so. But here we have someone who has been a deputy president. He is a deputy president by the Constitution, but then when he comes in and gets an amount of frustration, he ought to have left at that particular time and Kenyans would have stood by him. But now coming up to form another political party while at the same time being a member of the ruling party, that in itself is also not very good. But on the other hand also, the tormentings that have been done on Ruto as a deputy president have not been very good. If they knew that he was as bad as he is, then they ought to have actually called him in and then gave him his... the charge sheet for him to be given a right to defend himself. But by so payukering and talking and humiliating and pushing him and the person of that particular stand in society, that was not right. Mm-hmm. So the mistreatment of Ruto actually led him to do what he's doing, and there I support him.
Mm-hmm. All right, Professor Chacha.
I think the problem with this country right now is we have a constitution that safeguards the interests of individuals, including individuals who are going wild. It is important to note that you can't pull to a different direction from where the boss whom you have been serving together is pulling. So there is a big contradiction. During the era of the first president and the first vice president, Jaramogi Odinga, when he realized that his powers had been distributed to several other vice chairpersons of KANU, he wrote a letter to resign. And that letter, I have quoted it in my thesis, where he said, the future generation, I don't want them to come and judge me adversely for having earned the public money without doing a job, because the vice president then, Jaramogi Odinga, realized he had no job. And more often than not, the current deputy president has been heard in public saying that he has no job, that his job has been taken by other people who came from outside. So if it is true that he has no job, then he has no business sitting in an office that he was given for a job that he's not doing. I think it is important for us to say that in Kenya, we need politics to mature. And I'm hoping that that organization which regulates political parties can be strong enough and make decisive actions which can call people to order. There are so many politicians in this country who belong to one party, and the things they are doing are things of another party. And I don't think that augurs well for our nation. The future of our nation requires that we also grow the democratic space, allow each individual to make a judgment and a decision, but once you make a decision that you are not with me, then you cannot be with me and with somebody else. It is important for us to believe that we have mature politicians who should say, if I am not accommodated in this house, then I am leaving the house to go and start erecting another house. But you can't be in my house while you are also erecting your house. And you can't be pretending to obey the rules within my house when you have started alternative rules in the house that you have built. So for us as a country, perhaps we need to review the Constitution, and we need to review most of our regulations which allow belligerent people to behave like they are not going anywhere. Where they want to stay is where they are staying, even when they tell us that where I was staying, somebody else has entered there.
Right, thank you. Then there was March, and there came KEMSA. And we know the story of KEMSA and the COVID billionaires as well. as aptly captured in this particular editorial cartoon. Walk us this day to our daily tender. That was a pious prayer of one woman called Zubeda Ngobi, who owns Azure Commercial Services, with one Fanny Zonditi, who are irregularly awarded a tender supply to supply KN95 masks at 690 shillings each. Ngobi said she met KEMSA Procurement Director Charles Juma and told him her firm had capacity to supply the materials despite having not presented any paper, any documents. And details emerged that also a woman walked and was given 348 million shillings tender at the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority amid the ongoing COVID-19 heist investigation by the National Assembly. Let's just begin from there in light of what was happening last year and KEMSA. We know also the board members were shown off, were shown the door as well.
The bill, if you permit, I have a burning issue.
Please.
A counter to what my two colleagues were saying.
Before we go to KEMSA?
Yes, if you permit, because I think the country is already so polarized, our leadership, and I want to make a passionate appeal to our credible leadership, particularly among the non-state actors, that let's not try to drive any more wages between and among our leaders. This is why I keep saying how I wish we could have a super handshake between the president, his deputy, the former prime minister, even the other two OKA principals, because that's what the country needs. We need to bring them together.
There has been calls also by the church that we should have a reconciliatory meeting between the deputy president and the president.
Absolutely. And as a scientist, we have what we say, to every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. This is why we normally say freedom of the media, but also with responsibility. Party discipline, but also party democracy. So I think we must always be prepared to look at both sides. So even as much as we want to flaunt for discipline, it's always good also to have democracy. So as long as we remember that, just like we have Christ, Antichrist and all,
yes,
look at both sides. But more importantly, let's try to unify the country.